Hello, everyone. I am Nancy Perkins, and I am the president of Senior College, and we are initiating something sort of new. This is an idea, a wonderful idea that came to us from our webmaster, Al Arthur, and we are going to undertake a series of interviews with teachers and students and volunteers at Senior College in order to give everybody sort of a feel for where we're going with Zoom, how virtual learning has become a very important part of our mission these days. And so with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Deirdre Good, who is chair of curriculum committee this year and hopefully next year. Deirdre.
Hello, everybody. And thank you, Al, and thank you, Nancy, for making this conversation possible from the comfort of our own homes, to your place of coffee or wherever it is, maybe your car, out and about.
Room.
Your little place where you go to be alone. We're here to reach out in different ways to people who've never thought of taking courses at Senior College before. And I'm going to ask Nancy at some point about her course on tea, because that seems to be a great entry point into an easy entry point into the companionship and the good company that you will be in as you consider taking courses at Senior College. It's not all talking heads, it's having a cup of tea and something that you like in good company. So let me talk a little bit about the courses that we have lined up for you this spring. We've just opened up spring registration, and we have a website, Belfast Senior College, all one word.org, and then you'll get to the spring course offerings. Let me say that we have some courses being offered on novels. We have Jack, a novel by Marilyn Robinson. Arlen Larson has been an instructor for Senior College and been involved in Senior College for years and years and years. And so we're just delighted to have him back doing the third part of this Marilyn Robinson trilogy. So that'll be a very good course. The course that we have courses on politics, because we have a lot of retired people from public life and sort of service to the country in foreign service, for example. And we have an instructor called Dick Topping, who is probably known to many of you already, new only to me because I haven't been involved with Senior College for very long. He's doing a course this spring on Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election, a forensic counterintelligence study. I think it's particularly focused on the possibility of the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, because that's part of the title. So that'll be a course that really will be politically hot and a very interesting course. We have another literary course by Juliet Baker, who is known to many of you for many years. She's been teaching at Senior College, a selection of African-American poetry. And we're just thrilled because Juliet is a great teacher. She's a great teacher, and she prepares extremely thoroughly and carefully. And she's been immersed as a teacher in Massachusetts before she retired here to Maine in teaching of African-American poetry and literature. So, okay, we don't have access to a lot of African-American faculty, and we have access to literature. So coming up with this kind of a course is a way to make sure that we do the best we possibly can with regard to valuing Black lives, Black history, and Black traditions beyond things like Black History Month. We do have some health courses. We have a couple of courses, Better Health Now and Living Well for Better Health. And we're going to offer those at different times of the day. So we are offering a Thursday evening course for one of those courses, and otherwise it's during the day. We often have gardening courses. We have a course on growing organic asparagus. So those are the courses that we currently have. We also have a course that I am working on now. I don't know about any of you, but I find in this time of pandemic that immersing myself in another reality, whether through books or movies, or in this case, watching travel programs, keeps me sane. I don't know how else to say this. So we're gonna try and create a travel course. Nancy's going to be part of that. We'll have about 6 classes on 6 different places around the world with people from senior college. So that's a brief run through of the spring curriculum.
Right. Oh, and Pete Riley, you have a class from Pete.
Go ahead.
Jane Austen's England. It's not going to be teaching the literature of Jane Austen. It's going to be teaching the times of Jane Austen, how Jane Austen lived, how Jane Austen placed her novels, the timing, the politics, the geography. I think it'll be fascinating for all of us who have read and loved Jane Austen. And that's a lot that covers a lot of people apparently. So
Nancy,
I think in typical Pete Riley fashion, it will be an exciting, fun, interesting course. And so we expect to be a lot of people signing up for that. And then kind of going along with that is my course on tea, the universal drink. And that is going to be, right now it's a 2-day course, but I've got a local tea blender here named Duncan Newcomer, who is also a teacher, who wants to come, or who is willing to come and talk a little bit about how he got into blending his own tea. So that course will cover the history of tea. It'll take in the Asian tea ritual, which you see in China and Japan took it to great heights. Even the Koreans, all over Asia, there are certain rituals connected with tea and reasons for tea. With a wedding, you always have a tea ceremony. And then, of course, it was brought to the West, and there it became a completely different thing. It became a social, gossipy type of thing. And even today, women, men gather around the teapot and talk about everything. So that's what I'm going to do. And the only thing you need for that is your cup of tea and maybe a biscuit or two. I'm going English on you there. A cookie if you're American. But join me, share a little tea with Nancy, as they say. So that's my course. And we're still hoping for others. I think we will have a course on monarch butterflies, which will be very exciting.
right.
And I'm trying to get in touch with a local poet who I think might be an interesting teacher for something a little out of the ordinary about poetry, not writing poetry, but his look at poetry. And I hear he's very good, if I can just track him down. So we're all working on the curriculum committee.
Sounds very good. Nancy, you were saying something to me about what tea does to the human being, or in your experience.
In my experience, tea is one of those beverages that has this soothing, calming effect. Everybody should take that time. I mean, there's a reason people all over the world drink tea. And it's not just because it tastes good, it's because what it does to the psyche. It puts you in a place of repose, of contemplation. It soothes the mind, it soothes the body, and it soothes your spirit. And so there's a really important reason to drink tea. And I advise people, if I were a psychiatrist, I would tell everybody, go home and brew yourself a pot of tea. That would be my answer to a lot of problems in the world, because it really, when I feel frazzled, I want a cup of tea, because it does calm you. And it's been proven. It's not just my personal opinion. So
And there's a lot of reasons to be frazzled these
yes,
days.
there are.
Right.
I know
Um,
a lot of people who need to drink tea, but they don't.
exactly. I like to have tea at about 4 o'clock or
Yes,
even earlier, precisely because of the gap between the,
lunch,
the
dinner.
lunch break and then dinner. And I find if I have a 4 o'clock cup of tea, and then sometimes I teach in the evenings, it's a perfect way to wind up. You have to wind up a little to
Right.
teach, right? And it's a natural way of winding up. And then you come down off being wound up in the teaching experience, and then it's time for the evening, and then you can relax a bit and so on. So that afternoon tea is crucial.
Well, and afternoon tea, sometimes it's 3 o'clock, sometimes it's 4 o'clock. High tea, which Americans always are calling high tea the fancy tea, the afternoon tea, but high tea was really a working class meal. It's where you had something heavy like beans on toast with your
Yeah,
tea.
yeah,
And, kids coming home from school would
yeah,
have sort of
yeah.
a high tea, which high tea sounds like it ought to be society tea, but it's not.
Nancy, I'm going to tell you a secret about the way I grew up. So I was born in Kenya. My parents were Irish missionaries. And my mother, by profession, my father was ordained. My mother was a physiotherapist. And so
Mm,
she had her own career, so she was going out to work during the day. So she would get back from her daily work, wherever that was in Kenya. We moved back to Ireland. She got jobs in local hospitals and physiotherapy centers in Ireland. And then most recently in Kent, where I spent a large chunk of my life. The meal we had when my parents got home was something like high tea, baked beans on toast, mushrooms on toast,
right,
scrambled eggs on toast, and it
right.
had Irish bread, that soda bread, which is easy to make, and then maybe a piece of cake.
Mhm.
That was
Because
when I was introduced to dinner. Dinner would be that evening meal in which you had a sort of dining experience. I was completely un it was
what is this?
mystified. I was mystified. What is this? Because I grew up with that high tea thing, the toast stuff and the beans
Well,
and
it's
whatnot.
probably much healthier for you in some
You mean
ways.
eating earlier? Eating earlier.
Earlier. Yeah, and
Yeah,
not eating late and not eating a great big heavy meat and potatoes and bread. And I mean, we really Americans really have taken I don't know whose style we've adopted, but it's it's sort
yeah,
of a
yeah,
little bit heavier for
yeah,
it's one
yeah,
reason
yeah.
I have such a problem is
But it
this.
was such a practical meal. My mother could then relax. My father
Exactly.
would
Exactly.
occasionally be able to produce the supper as well. So,
Yeah.
there was a pragmatic reason for it. And yeah, anyway, it worked for us.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
mystifying to discover
I
a whole new meal.
know.
Anyway,
Kenya is one of the world's, it produces a lot of tea. There's a
it
lot
does.
of tea that
It
comes out.
does. It's the altitude. It's the
And
altitude. So,
Ireland, my goodness. I mean, do you know Bewley's in Dublin?
oh, there was an attempt to make sure that Bewley's still continues. I'm not sure if it was successful.
Well, when I first went to Ireland and I stayed right around the corner from Bewley's in an apartment with um, an actor friend and his wife. He was appearing not at Abbey, but what is the wonderful theater across from, oh, the big Georgian theater in Ireland, I mean in Dublin. It'll come to me, but he was appearing there with in an Arthur Miller play, and he was a fairly well-known actor in this country. But they invited us to come, and we had breakfast every morning at Bewley's. I mean, you could have yogurt, you could have porridge, you could have this, you could have that. Then when I went back and took Steve back to Ireland, Bewley's had changed. They didn't offer that breakfast anymore. It was
Wow.
to and in the when I first went, every lunchtime, every day of the week at Bewley's upstairs,
Yeah.
you could buy soup and sandwich or soup and bread and watch a small play. And all it cost you was the cost of your meal, which was, €5 or something, if that. But I mean, there would be some actors, because Dublin is such a town of theater. It would be a two-person play or a three-person play or a one-person play. Absolutely wonderful.
That is
And I
amazing.
still have my Bewley's canisters because I love Bewley's Black Irish tea.
Yeah.
And when I got back in the 1970s, we started a food co-op in my little town in Virginia. And we had an Irish priest named, in fact, he was just wonderful. Um, his father owned a grocery store in Dublin, so he would ship over black Irish tea for us little American girls to drink, and that was the start of my real love of tea.
Yeah.
Jerry Creedon he was just the priest of Virginia. Everybody loved Jerry Creedon. He was quite a man.
That's wonderful.
No longer with us,
I
but
think the Irish tea is well known for being able to support a teaspoon.
right.
You know it's tea when the teaspoon can stand up in the tea by itself.
Oh, black Irish tea. No,
That's it.
it's really a wonderful tea,
That's
followed only by Harrod's afternoon tea, which is very good blend. That's one of my favorites, and you can't get that in this country. You can get other Harrod's tea, but you can't get the afternoon because I keep looking. So I just do with Earl Grey and Earl Grey
I
milk.
think your tea course sounds wonderful.
Oh, it'll
It
be
sounds
fun.
like a balm for the soul and good for the human body as well. Yeah.
Not from Gilead, but nevertheless, a balm for the soul. So I have to find some of my tea quotes. But it's always the nice thing about Zoom, I find, is that we can have a course come to us, the middle of March, and we can have it. Where when we're back in virtual, when we're back in face-to-face learning, we are really constricted by the time we get to use the Hutchinson Center. We have that 6-week period and that's it. But Zoom gives us that advantage of being able to have the class when we want it. And if we want it at 7 o'clock at night, we teach it at 7 o'clock at night. I think Pete is going to do a 4 o'clock class again, which people like. Um, I'm taking a 1:30 class in the afternoon, which is fine, except I find myself or 1 o'clock class, that's about the time I have lunch. So I feel like it's very rude to eat on Zoom. But then you just do that to your computer and nobody knows.
That's
I
very good. That's very good.
learned to change.
Nancy, can you tell me about your involvement in senior college?
What got me involved? Oh, Elizabeth Pollock. When I first moved here, I joined the Y. I went to the Y. I was taking aerobic exercises, and there was this lovely lady who said, "You should come to senior college." Well, when Elizabeth speaks, you listen because of the tone of her voice. So
Right, right.
I went home that day. It was like September. I went on, I joined, and I signed up for a course taught by a wonderful woman who unfortunately is no longer with us. And then I took a course from Arlen Lawson, and then I was just hooked. And Arlen asked me, just because I was in his class and he was then the president, if I would chair the communications or publicity committee. Well, there was no committee, it was Nancy. And so I got a couple of people together, and basically what we did is we licked stamps and put them on postcards that we mailed out. I mean, there wasn't that much to do, and send press releases to the newspaper. And then from there, I moved on to the curriculum committee. And from there, I was asked to be on the board. And so that's my development. I have managed to, with Zoom, I have managed to take too many courses that I feel like I Zoom every day. I took 5 courses this past time, which is wonderful because I meet new people. I've learned to write.